This is video number 3, what to do if one or more of your sequences are low quality. Before you watch these videos, you did part 2. Part 2 asked you if you received trustworthy data from GENEWIZ. To determine if your 2 DNA sequences were trustworthy, you looked at 2 scores, called the QS and CRL score. If you had a quality score that was less than 24 and a CRL, continuous read length score, that was less than 500, you concluded that your DNA sequences were probably not trustworthy. That's the same thing as saying that your DNA sequences potentially have low quality. Another way for you to determine whether or not your sequences are low quality is to use DNA Subway. In the last video, video number 2, you just saw 2 DNA sequences. One was high quality and the other was low. Let's look at those 2 DNA sequences now. Here's DNA Subway. Those 2 sequences that we were looking at was A21 and A22. A22 had pretty good quality. You can tell because you had an entire DNA sequence at the top. You had somewhat good Fred scores, and you had low peaks and background noise. A22 is an example of a good quality sequence. A21, however, looks very different. Your DNA sequence is actually not present at all. Instead, you have a bunch of N's, which stands for nucleotide. You're missing down here a complete Fred score, and rather you have a question mark instead. And down below, your peaks and background noise are pretty crazy and all over the place. Because this sequence is low quality, you can also tell by looking at this little image and putting your cursor over it. The exclamation mark reads, low quality score alert. It says, the average error rate for this sequence is greater than 1%. This indicates that the sequence is of low quality and may produce erroneous analysis results. If you have one sequence that is like this in your team, or you potentially even have 2 sequences that have low quality, what you need to do instead for your data analysis is to select sequences that have okay quality to choose from. Right here in your Step 7 document, I give you several DNA sequences that have good quality. A22 that we've been looking at, A42, A52, A61, and so on, all have good quality. At the bottom of this document, you will need to answer these questions in order to analyze your data. If you have very low quality DNA sequences, you're going to indicate that in the first question. All other questions then, if you have low quality sequences, you're going to actually pick a different sequence to analyze. So for an example, in question number 2, I asked, given your results to question number 1, what are the 2 DNA sequences that you will be analyzing for the results of your lab report. I give you several options, like I am analyzing my own team's 2NA sequences because the quality was okay. I am analyzing one of my own DNA sequences and one DNA sequence from another person team because only one of my DNA sequences had low quality. Or maybe your team didn't have good quality DNA at all, and you would choose this last option. I am analyzing two DNA sequences that come from another person/team because my own team's seafood samples were too low of quality. You would then write the name and identification number of the two samples that you looked at instead. Again, you would pick from this list here to look at these samples if your team had low quality DNA. So for section A, team 2, they want to make sure to at least look at one other DNA sequence sample to make sure they can answer these questions in their step 7 document. To select new DNA sequences that you and your team can analyze instead of your low quality sequences, go ahead and click the button Home. Here, you then want to click the blue square, Determine Sequence Relationships. And from here, just like in video number 1, you can log back in and upload new sequences to view. So let's say that you decided you want to look at instead A52 and A61. Click on the button Import Trace Files from DNALC. Open up your results. Click on A51 and the other A61. Add your selected files. You can give it a new project title. And you can log in. Now, click on Sequence Viewer, and you'll see the two new DNA sequences that you can now analyze instead of your team's low quality sequences. Here, you can now write and answer the questions given in step 7 based on looking at these two samples. When answering your questions in step 7, you just want to make sure that you are now looking at, note that you're looking at Team A, Section A, Team 6, Sample 1, Section A, Team 5, Sample 1. You want to note that you're looking at these samples now rather than your own. The reason why I have each of you select new DNA sequences to look at and talk about instead of your low quality sequences is because when writing the results section of your lab report, you will need to discuss the skill and process of analyzing two DNA sequences in DNA Subway. This is the reason why I have you look at other samples rather than your own if you had low quality. You are now ready for looking at the last video, which is video number 4, matching your DNA sequences to a species. Click out of video number 3 and now watch video number 4, the last video that you need to watch before answering the question.